Welcome back, boys. Week 2 fantasy recap coming your way. Another exciting weekend of fantasy action, football action all around, really. Spartans sitting at 3-0, so at least we have that to look forward to. Although our team did really not do too hot this week, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Nick is still unable to make his schedule work for the show, so this week, fortunately, we have Kevin of FaZe Kev coming in to be the co-host. So, Kev, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
How we doing, boys? It's always a pleasure. Always, we're freshly home from the FaZe offices, long day at the office, but always excited to talk some fantasy with my boys. So, like you, Travis, little bit of a rough week this week, but hey, we'll take it and we'll move on. But excited to talk fantasy as always.
We're certainly excited to have you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our first game of the week. We had WalllessPluto 84 with a big week, getting them the Kiffin Award this week. 169 to 131 takedown of the Pams brings them back to 101.
So for Noah here, he's walking away with our Kiffin Award for the week this week. He had four really big players that came in clutch for him. He had Alvin Kamara, who put up near over 40 points, which is something that we hardly see. That was kind of a game that was a really big tossback to his 5 touchdown game a couple years ago, but obviously he couldn't come up with that. But that's still a huge performance. He had Justin Jefferson come up with 23 points. He's finally looking in a decent shape with Sam Darnold back behind the helm. He has Brock Bowers going 2 for 2 with over 10 targets. He looks like he might be this year's Sam Laporta. And he has James Conner going for 23 points, who's always solid as an RB2. So all around a very solid week for Noah this week, and he walks away with the win.
As for the Pams on the flip side here, they had some solid performances at the top, but it would be less of a total team effort this week, which would find them in the loss column. Lamar with 20. You see both his running backs scoring in the high teens. Malik Neighbors, the rookie, with a big 28-point performance. You could call it a breakout performance, I guess, even though his team and this team lost. So probably won't be too memorable. But as you see in the bottom half of the lineup here, things started getting concerning. Cooper Kupp further dealing with some injury issues, only single digits. Theo Johnson, 0 targets on the whole day. He played like 80% of the snaps, so that's not a great sign for this team. Although what is a good sign for this team, defense and special teams at the kicker position really seem to be shining bright for them. They both scored in the high teens again this week. We'll see if that continues going forward, but this team does fall to 0-2. They will certainly have to right the ship sooner than later if they want to keep their playoff hope. All right, moving on to our second game of the week. We are not too proud of this one. Glizz Mafia came into town. They were able to take one from us with a 110-94. Just bad performances out of both teams, but really pathetic on our side. Kev, why don't you tell the world how Cleesby was able to break our hearts?
Sure. So Cleeseby's walking away with this week's Swiper Award. Obviously, he had HN, who was really his saving grace with just around 30 points this week. He had CeeDee Lamb going for 20 points. It looks like he's finally back in the rhythm of things after his contract talks. And he had a couple players that were under 10 points for the week this week, but obviously with some key players coming in clutch in some key moments, he was able to walk away with the win. And unfortunately, being a swiper, Travis, that adds a little bit more salt in the wound, but I know that both of these teams are on strong courses for this season and seasons beyond. So this week, Tyler with the dub with some clutch moments out of the boys.
Yeah, on the flip side here, we were really just going through it all week. A lot of injuries to deal with, but it's kind of looking like it's going to be that way for a while. Kenneth Walker's still questionable to return even for week 3. And we have McCaffrey and Puka Nacua on the IR. Sounds like both could be out for 4 or 5, even longer than that. So we got to figure out how to dig deep. We need some players to step up here. It was not really the case this week. So we'll see if that's able to change going forward. Chris Godwin, longtime veteran of this team, was able to get 24 points for us. So we're happy to see that out of him. Showed great leadership, even in troubling times. And we really need more from our team captain, Travis Kelce. He is currently, if we click on here, real quick. Currently tight end number 28 in the league through 2 weeks. That is just not enough to get it done. Only 1 point in this one. We really need to see more usage out of him going forward if we want to start winning some games. But yeah, this is one where you just throw the film out. Hopefully we have a good week of practice. Get back to it next week. We got to find ourselves back in the win column. And that takes us to our third game of the week. We have the Philly Cheekles improving to 2-0 with a sneaky 145-141 victory over FaZe Kev. Blake was really carried on the backs of three big performers in this one. Nico Collins, 27 points on 135 yards and a touchdown. Big win for the Texans over the Bears this week, and he was a big part of that for them and for Philly Cheekles in the fantasy realm. And then defense and special teams really came through for this team. Fairbairn had 5 total makes on the way to 22.5 points. Chargers defense getting 27 of their own, only 3 points allowed against Carolina. You may say it's Carolina, but it is still technically an NFL team. So that's very impressive nonetheless. Like we said, Philly Cheekles improves to 2-0. We'll see if they're able to keep this momentum going and earn themselves a playoff spot this year.
This one was a bit of a rough week for us, Travis. One hurt. This one really stung. I'm obviously it's all hats off to Blake. He put up in a fantastic week and was a really all around solid opponent this week. He had his key moments where Nico Collins, he got a lot of help. I know going into the final game of the night, going into the Eagles Texans game, where like the last two matchups that we had, Nico went bonkers and his kicker went bonkers too. So he was able to kind of cover off the risk that Saquon had. But kind of like you, it was a good week of film. We can kind of toss it out and say, you know what, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. We can kind of keep this film, use it as a learning lesson. Obviously, didn't have the biggest game out of our captain, Josh Allen, only with 11 points this week. But one thing to really take away was that our lowest skill player only had 9 points this week. So that's honestly something that is kind of to be proud of when it's your lowest guy on the team. So obviously we can work on that. Steelers defense came up with 26 points off of 2 picks, which is really huge for us. It looks like they're starting to really start to turn around. And TJ Watt looks like a beast. And then Amon-Ra's finally back on his bullshit with 19 targets for 27.1 points. It feels so good to know that the Sun God is finally back in the rhythm of things, especially after week 1. So all around solid week for the boys. We'll take 140 points and a loss, because that's the 4th most points in the league going up against the 3rd most points in the week this week. And obviously we came home with the L, unfortunately, but a really solid week out of the boys, and I'm proud of them. All hats off to Blake.
All right, moving on to our 4th game of the week. We had Cleveland Steamers with a big bounce back win, 151-11 over PC Principal. Kev, why don't you go ahead and tell us how Cleveland Steamers was able to get this done?
Absolutely. So Cleveland Steamers, they had, I think, they were top 2 in points this week for sure. Nick really got it done and really drove it home with J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins, coming off an Achilles injury last year in Baltimore, finds himself in a brand new system out there in LA with Coach Harbaugh and a run scheme offense running behind Joe Alt. 24 points on 131 yards and a tud. He only had, kind of like my team, he only had one player under 10 points this week. And I think that was his kicker, Travis, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. Yeah, Rashad White. Okay. So honestly, again, at the very end of the day, he got the win, and he only had one skill player under 10 points, which is perfect. The Texans D came through with 28.5 points. I believe they sacked Caleb Williams 5 times this past, which is 3rd. 7 sacks, actually. Okay, which is even worse. But it's very huge to see out of the Texans defense. I know they kind of restocked that room this past offseason. So honestly, a solid win all across the board for the Steamers this week.
Yeah, and on the flip side here, PC Principal, not the strongest of days as a whole team. They definitely had some strong performances. Breece Hall with 22.9 for the Jets in a big win over the Titans for them. What really cost them was right here in the middle. They had 4 consecutive single-digit performances. Most notably, only 6.6 out of Tyreek. So that would definitely be considered a down week for him. He's usually getting closer to about 30. At the end of the lineup, the specialists played well, both getting over 10 points. but it would not quite be enough for them this week. They do now fall to 0-2. They will also have to get things back on the right track quickly if they want to have a shot at the playoffs at the end of the year. And that one will now bring us to our fifth and final game of the week. We had Sticky Mistakes, big bounce back after a very injury-plagued week 1. They get the win 138-123 over Francy FaZe.
And Travis, to sum up Adam's win, I have 2 words for you. James Cook. And 3 words for you. James fucking Cook. Because that guy cooked this entire week this week. I don't know if anybody else saw the Bills game this week, but that man could not be tackled. And obviously that's a huge part in Adam's win this week. Seeing him, and you pair that with Jalen Hurts' 31 points at the top of the score sheet, you're already down bad, especially when you have a first game like James Cook and a last game like Jalen Hurts. That's no easy feat for PC Principal to come off, or sorry, for Matt to come off. And obviously towards the middle of the lineup, he had a couple players that didn't really have the strongest games this past week, but that was really kind of offset and erased by his defensive performance, which is always good. And like you said, Trav, it's a solid bounce back win after week 1. It's good to see Adam kind of back in the win column with 134 points this week.
Yeah, on the flip side here for Francy FaZe, this was not quite as good as their Kiffin performance in week 1. This was a devastating week, both performance-wise and injury-wise. And looking back, this might be the week where things go wrong with them if they're not able to correct the ship and get back to racking up wins going forward. The main reason I say that, Tua Tagovailoa, A, did not have a great game, and B, got another scary concussion, as we all saw against the Bills. So it looks like he's going to be out at least a month, maybe the rest of the year, but sounds like at least a month. So definitely want to put our prayers up for Tua. But that is a spot that this team is now going to have to fill from the fantasy perspective going forward. So we'll see how they're able to fill that. Their running backs did have a solid day this week, both Etienne and Robinson getting in the high teens. Devontae Adams was also a shining point with 25 points on 110 yards and a touchdown. George Kittle had himself a good game as well, but just one too many single digits here towards the bottom of the lineup, and with the injury to Tua. And they would fall with only 123 points. See if they're able to get back on track next week. They still sit at 500, but things not quite looking as good for this team after that brilliant week 1 performance. And now we will take a look ahead at the week 3 schedule so that everyone knows what kind of action we have to look forward to this upcoming week. First game, yours truly, Texas size 10 Fords. We're looking to bounce back after a terrible performance last week. This is as good of a team to do it against as any, with the Pams coming to town. They're sitting at 0-2, so hopefully we're going to make that 0-3. Second matchup, we got Francy FaZe and Cleveland Steamers. Both teams sitting at 1-1. Took opposite paths to get there. We'll see who's able to keep the winning record going and who's going to fall back below 500. Third matchup, FaZe Cav taking on PC Principal. FaZe Cav 1-1, PC Principal 0-2. Cav, what do you got to do this week to make sure that PC Principal falls to 0-3?
All we got to do is play our game. I know we lost Isaiah Pacheco for 6 to 8 weeks, but we have Jordan Mason right there to back him up. So as long as we play our game, play our matchups, stay focused, we're putting Coop in the dirt.
I like it. And then fourth matchup, Glizz Mafia off to a hot 2-0 start. They're going to keep that going against Sticky Mistakes, who just had a big bounce back week. See who's able to get the win there. And then fifth and final matchup, WalllessPluto 84, now coming off a Kiffin Award performance. They're looking to take on the red-hot Philly Cheekles, who now sit at 2-0. See if they're able to keep it going or if WalllessPluto will climb above 500. And that is all that we have for you boys this week. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Kev, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Peace up, boys. That's all I have to say.
All right, boys. Thanks again for tuning in. Hope everyone has a great week. Peace out.